Some motorcycles are so utterly worthless. Buying one should come with a psych evaluation and a full refund for your dignity. This is the brutal countdown of 30 motorcycles only very dumb people buy. And if yours is on here, it's time to burn the registration. We're going to start off with the overstyled Honda Rune 2004-5. If you've ever wanted to waste a small fortune on a motorcycle that's basically unusable, the Honda Rune is your dream come true. Honda decided to take their reliable Goldwing platform and transform it into what can only be described as a rolling art exhibit that nobody asked for. If you've ever wanted to own a concept bike that accidentally made it into production, meet the Honda Rune. It is the most stylish yet confusing bike that was ever made, being covered with insane chrome at the fenders, forks, pipes, and even the radiator. The Rune features a massive 1832 cubic centimeter flat-six engine that, while powerful, is completely wasted in this chassis. The bike weighs a staggering 850 pounds. You read that correctly? It's heavier than some small cars. Try maneuvering that beast in a parking lot, and you'll need a chiropractor appointment immediately afterward. Just by using it, you can feel the weight of the bike. Beautifully designed, but very terrible to ride far. Honda somehow managed to create a cruiser that simultaneously stretched out like a chopper, yet cramped like a sports bike. Your arms reach for handlebars that feel like they're in another zip code, while your legs are awkwardly folded beneath you. Good luck on turning at low speeds with this one. It's basically driving a grand piano with handlebars. And the price? When it launched in 2004, Honda had the audacity to charge nearly $30,000 for this monstrosity. That's right, 30 grand for what was essentially a Goldwing engine, stuffed into a frame designed by someone who had clearly consumed too many energy drinks. But the real kicker? Honda only made them for 2 years because, surprise, nobody wanted to buy them. Now collectors try to convince themselves they're rare treasures worth preserving. No, they're not rare because they're special. They're rare because they were a terrible idea from the start. It's not even considered as a sport bike nor as a tourer. You are literally just driving a very shiny machine. The Rune is a bike that says, "I bought this to impress people who don't ride." Thinking this is the heaviest bike? You are wrong. In our next spot, I will introduce you to the Boss Hoss V8, a car in a motorcycle's body. Have you ever looked at a perfectly good motorcycle and thought, you know what this needs? A Chevy small block V8 engine. No? Well, someone did. And that's how we ended up with the Boss Hoss, the motorcycle equivalent of putting a jet engine on a shopping cart. The Boss Hoss isn't just big, it's comically oversized. Powered by a 350 or 502 cubic inch V8 engine because apparently 100 horsepower wasn't enough. This monstrosity weighs in at over 1,100 pounds. That's not a typo. It literally weighs half a car's weight. The rear tires are not made of motorcycle tires. They are literally car tires. We're talking about an 8.2-liter engine with over 445 to 563 horsepower on a motorcycle. Riding a Boss Hoss isn't motorcycling, it's survival. The handling is exactly what you'd expect from strapping a car engine between two wheels. Non-existent. Corners aren't taken so much as negotiated with, and stopping this beast requires the kind of forward planning usually reserved for ocean liners. Then there's the heat. Sitting inches away from a V8 engine is like straddling a blast furnace. Hope you enjoy having your inner thighs slow-cooked to medium well while you ride. And fuel economy? Let's just say you'll be on a first-name basis with every gas station attendant within a 20-mile radius of your home. The price tag for this two-wheeled identity crisis? Anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000, depending on how much chrome you want to blind other motorists with. It is beyond overkill for a bike. Twist that throttle too hard, you're gonna jump into another dimension. Confused? Why call this even a bike? It's like navigating a barge across the Atlantic Ocean full of icebergs. If it tips over, don't even try to pick it up. Just bury it where it falls and start a new life. And the fuel consumption drains not only your wallet, but also your mental health. You are looking at around 10 to 15 miles per gallon here, and it only drinks premium. If you think this is nice, get a car instead, more accurate to what you want. Now it's not all about too much weight. Sometimes it's about the looks. Here comes next, the designer disaster, Aprilia Moto 6.5. When motorcycle manufacturers hire famous designers with zero motorcycle experience, you get the Aprilia Moto 6.5, a bike designed by Philippe Starck, a man known for furniture design who apparently thought motorcycles should look like melted plastic toys. The Moto 6.5 is what happens when style aggressively overpowers substance. Powered by a single-cylinder 650cc engine that produces a yawn-inducing 43 horsepower, this bike manages to be both underpowered and overpriced. It's like paying for a Ferrari and getting a Fiat with a fancy paint job. Let's talk about that design. The Moto 6.5 looks like it was created by someone who had only ever seen motorcycles in cartoons. It features bizarre plastic panels, an awkward seat that looks like an afterthought, and ergonomics that seem designed specifically to make physiotherapists wealthy. The riding experience is equally disappointing. The engine vibrates like it's trying to escape the frame, the suspension feels like it was salvaged from a shopping cart, and the handling is best described as unpredictable, and not in an exciting way. Very mediocre, especially for an Aprilia. With no aftermarket at all, this bike received no attention from riders. You want accessories, parts, upgrades, mods? Non-existent. Was meant for short city rides, but still uncomfortable doing that. Nobody supported it, not even its own company Aprilia. Broke something? Your best answer is to make furniture out of the whole thing instead. Oh, but some do love it until now, the design hipsters. That's why you'll most likely only see it in museums, not roads. But poorly designed bikes do not end there. You should meet the BMW C1. The wannabe bike. Imagine paying motorcycle prices for something that removes everything fun about riding a motorcycle. That's the BMW C1, a scooter with delusions of grandeur that somehow managed to combine the worst aspects of cars and motorcycles into one baffling package. The C1 was BMW's attempt to create a safe motorcycle by adding a roof, windshield, and seatbelts. Yes, seatbelts on a motorcycle. The result looked like what would happen if a smart car and a scooter had an ugly baby that neither wanted to claim. Powered by a wheezy 125cc or 200cc engine, the C1 wasn't just slow, it was glacial, and despite its car-like pretensions, it offered none of a car's benefits. No air conditioning, no decent storage space, and certainly no dignity when seen in public. There's no doubt this is one of the dumbest designs of BMW. It's a scooter trying to blend in with cars. A chunky scooter at best, slow, terrible center of gravity, and absolutely hard to park. The final insult? In many countries, you still needed a motorcycle license to ride it, and in some places, you were still required to wear a helmet, despite BMW's insistence that the roll cage made helmets unnecessary. So you got all the bureaucratic hassle of motorcycle ownership with none of the fun. BMW mercifully discontinued the C1 after just a few years of dismal sales. Today, they occasionally pop up for sale as unique collector's items, which is code for, "Please take this embarrassment off my hands." But it's now all about the looks and weight. What about speed? Here comes next, the Kawasaki Ninja 250. The Kawasaki Ninja 250 is an icon in the rider's world. Now, before the pitchforks come out, the Kawasaki Ninja 250 isn't a bad motorcycle. In fact, it's an excellent beginner bike. The problem isn't the bike itself, it's the people who buy it for all the wrong reasons. Every year, thousands of wannabe racers purchase Ninja 250s thinking they're getting miniature superbikes. They slap on aftermarket exhausts, flashy graphics, and frame sliders, convinced they're one mod away from MotoGP glory. The reality? They're still riding a 250cc motorcycle that struggles to outrun a determined cyclist on a hill with a 249 cubic centimeter engine, reaching 32 horsepower. It's light, forgiving, and reliable, but that doesn't stop clueless riders. These misguided souls spend thousands customizing their Ninja 250S, often investing more in modifications than the bike is worth. They'll add power commanders, air filters, and race fairings to a bike that makes all of 30 horsepower on a good day. It's like putting a spoiler on a golf cart. It doesn't make it faster, it just makes you look silly. Spoiler? It's not. It's the training wheels of sport bikes. It's a slow one at most. If you are an experienced rider who can easily use bikes, this one is a very unnecessary choice. It's a lawnmower. The saddest part? Many of these over-modified Ninja 250s barely get ridden. Their owners quickly realize that no amount of carbon fiber can transform their beginner bike into a ZX10R. So the bike sits in the garage, a monument to misplaced enthusiasm. Sounds so sharp that it's either an angry hairdryer or a mosquito passing by at a disappointing speed. It's a great beginner bike. You can learn how to ride without dying, and that's honestly very rare for a sports bike. If you want a Ninja 250, buy one for what it is, a brilliant beginner motorcycle. But if you're purchasing one thinking you'll transform it into a track weapon, you might as well set your money on fire. At least that would provide some actual heat. But that's now the slowest one yet. The next one is the identity crisis on wheels, Honda DN01. The Honda DN01 is what happens when a motorcycle manufacturer has an existential crisis. Is it a cruiser? Is it a sport bike? Is it a scooter? Honda's answer was yes, and the result was a bike that failed spectacularly at being any of those things. Futuristic design, fully automatic, and has an identity crisis? Yep, you heard me. This bike does not fall in any category. Cruiser, scooter, sport bike, tourer, absolutely none. Too heavy and long for a sport bike, too expensive and weird for a cruiser, and not practical enough to be a scooter. No storage like a scooter, no bags like a tourer, and definitely no accessories like a cruiser. The riding experience is equally baffling. The feet-forward position suggests cruiser, but the low handlebars say sport bike, resulting in a riding position that seems specifically designed to make chiropractors wealthy. And despite its substantial size, the DN01 offers minimal storage space, poor passenger accommodations, and handling that can best be described as reluctant. Under all that questionable styling sits a 680cc V-twin engine that produces a thoroughly underwhelming 60 horsepower. But the real head-scratcher is the transmission, a hydromechanical automatic CVT that Honda grandly named Human-Friendly Transmission. There's nothing friendly about paying motorcycle prices for scooter performance. It runs in hopes and dreams. And speaking of prices, Honda had the audacity to charge around $15,000 for this confusion on wheels when it launched. That's right, $15,000 for a bike that couldn't decide what it wanted to be when it grew up. The idea was there, just poorly executed. Planning on buying this? Just get yourself a real bike, saving us both some time, away from problems. Next up, the Kawasaki ZN1300 Voyager. The motorcycle that ate all the food. What if you put handlebars on a cruise ship? You get the Kawasaki ZN13000 Voyager. The standard Z1300 was already a behemoth with its 1300cc six-cylinder engine, but Kawasaki wasn't satisfied. They added fairings, saddlebags, a trunk, and enough plastic to keep petroleum companies profitable for years. The result was a touring motorcycle that weighed nearly 900 pounds wet, about the same as a small rhinoceros. The ideal tourer, until it's not. It may run smooth like melted butter sliding down the hood of a Cadillac due to its inline six-cylinder, with over 1,286 cubic centimeters and 120 horsepower. But it added so much weight, the bike handled like a runaway upright piano. At nearly 800 pounds wet, this beast was less Voyager, more cargo freighter. It's like putting a jet engine on a lawnmower. You don't ride a ZN1300, you captain it. It is so massive that turning is quite difficult. And then there's the reliability. These bikes are famous for surprising electrical failures, vacuum line issues, and carburetors that seemingly adjust themselves at random. Long-distance touring on one of these is basically Russian roulette with spark plugs. If you're planning a cross-country ride on a Voyager, bring tools, and maybe a priest. And fuel economy? Don't ask. The ZN1300 drinks gas like it's trying to forget its own existence. You'd be filling up at every rest stop while watching actual Goldwings cruise by with smug grins and half-full tanks. Next in our list is the Ducati Panagale V4, the idiot's chick magnet. Don't get me wrong, the Ducati Panagale is an engineering masterpiece, a stunning achievement in motorcycle design, and one of the most capable superbikes ever created. It's also completely wasted on 90% of the people who buy it. A very powerful track weapon, equipped with aerodynamics and loaded with tech, It's not just a bike, it's a statement. With over 1103cc and 214 horsepower V4 engine, race-spec suspension, an electronics suite more advanced than most fighter jets, this thing is born for the racetrack. It's basically a MotoGP tech that barely made itself street legal. Being the fastest bike in the market, it is also one of the most misused ones. The Panagale is a bike that demands respect and skill. Its aggressive riding position, razor-sharp handling, and explosive power delivery require a level of competence that weekend warriors simply don't possess. Yet these riders convince themselves that owning a Ducati somehow transfers racing ability through osmosis. It's supposed to go through speeds, not under 30. No wonder there are complaints of it overheating. They are driving a 214 horsepower down city streets on speed limit. Some even buy this just for attention. All they do is flex their bike and pose in front of women. Ducati Panagale equals instant chick magnet in their mind. Look at me! I have the fastest bike out here! Pay attention to me only. I'm the coolest one. They don't even use it properly. If you can't even ride a 300cc, don't buy this hell of a machine. Most owners never leave third gear. They're too scared to open the throttle, too stiff to lean, and too proud to admit they bought way more bikes than they can handle. The Panagale isn't a toy, it's a scalpel. A scalpel in the hands of someone who's never used anything sharper than a butter knife. Not only you will embarrass yourself in front of experienced bikers, but also other Panagale owners that actually know the true value of such a bike. Like it's a cool bike, just not in the right hands. Many superbikes are misused just like the next one. The Yamaha R1, our well-known organ donor. The iconic Yamaha R1 that was inspired by Valentino Rossi's M1 MotoGP bike. One of the fastest bikes out there and built with MotoGP-level electronics. But this bike is so intense that it does not trust its own riders. It's a 998 cubic centimeter inline-4 monster with a crossplane crank that makes it sound like an angry chainsaw opera. It revs to the moon, hits triple digits in a blink, and will absolutely yeet you into a ditch if you're not paying attention. Now what's so bad about it? It's not a bad bike, it just gets used by the wrong people. Just like our Ducati Panagale 5.4, some buy it for attracting eyes and ears. Unless you live near or at a racetrack, you are just dragging a loud banshee through red lights and school zones. This bike wants to go 180 miles per hour while you just want to get Starbucks, not a healthy relationship. It was designed to be a track bike, knees to your ears, wrists on fire, absolutely no seat padding, and having a cuddle moment with the fuel tank. No wonder some complain about the seating position because they are using it oppositely from its main purpose. That is not a cruiser, that is a superbike on the highway. Running this at low speeds not only ruins its gears and minimizes driver comfort, it also creates so much heat just right under the seat. This bike was made for track riders, not for wannabe main characters in the city. Up next is the Kawasaki Ninja H2R, the road to heaven motorcycle. Want to meet the Grim Reaper? Buy a Kawasaki Ninja H2R. The H2R isn't a motorcycle, it's a statement that says, my bank account is bigger than my common sense. Let's start with the obvious. The H2R is not street legal. It says so right on the bike. It has no headlights, no turn signals, no mirrors, and emissions that would make an oil refinery blush. Yet somehow, people still buy these $55,000 machines and then complain that they can't ride them on public roads. What exactly did you think you were buying? With specs made of 998 cubic centimeters inline, 4 supercharged, topping 310 horsepower. This is the definition of ride now, hospital later. The H2R makes over 310 horsepower in a package that weighs less than 450 pounds. For comparison, that's more power-to-weight ratio than a Bugatti Chiron. It's a bike so powerful that even professional racers approach it with caution. Yet somehow, dentists and software engineers with more money than sense convince themselves they need this level of performance. You may have money to buy it now, not enough money to fix it later. This bike does not belong anywhere. Firstly, it is too fast for a public road. Secondly, it is too loud. Lastly, you will eventually off yourself with it. It's not a bike, it's a machine to meet God. Want to get one? Make sure you have a guardian angel with you. A little twist on that throttle can make you see a glimpse of the stairways to heaven. Why dumb? because only the ones who actually would dare to use these are the ones who are not scared for their life. Yeah, it's cool until you crash and wake up to a red and blue light above you. Surprise! Not only did you lose $1,000, but also a limb. Now, let's take a look at the Suzuki GSX250R, a bike that screams, "I'm a sport bike," but in truth, it's actually a moped in disguise. This is the motorcycle equivalent of a Chihuahua wearing a spiked collar, trying desperately to look tough while being fundamentally unthreatening. Powered by a wheezy 248cc parallel twin engine that produces a yawn-inducing 25 horsepower, this bike struggles to outrun a determined cyclist on a hill. Yet every year, thousands of wannabe racers slap on aftermarket exhausts, flashy graphics, and frame sliders, convinced they're one mod away from MotoGP glory. The problem here isn't about the bike itself. It's actually a decent beginner motorcycle. The problem is the people who buy it thinking they're getting a mini Hayabusa. These misguided souls spend thousands customizing their GSX250Rs, often investing more in modifications than the bike is worth. They'll add power commanders, air filters, and race fairings to a bike that gets about 65 miles per gallon, but couldn't pull the skin off a rice pudding. It's like putting a spoiler on a golf cart. It doesn't make it faster, it just makes you look silly. The saddest part? Many of these over-modified GSX250Rs barely get ridden. Their owners quickly realize that no amount of carbon fiber can transform their beginner bike into a GSX R1000. So, the bike sits in the garage, a monument to misplaced enthusiasm, sounding like an angry hairdryer when it does run. It's a great beginner bike. You can learn how to ride without dying, and that's honestly very rare for a sports bike. But if you're purchasing one thinking you'll transform it into a track weapon, you might as well set your money on fire. At least that would provide some actual heat. But if you think a lightweight beginner bike with delusions of grandeur is bad, wait until you see what happens when a cruiser manufacturer tries to build a sport bike. Our next entry is what happens when your grandpa tries to become one of today's youth. The HarleyDavidson VRod is what occurs when a company known for making agricultural equipment with wheels decides to build a performance motorcycle. It's the motorcycle equivalent of your 50-year-old uncle wearing skinny jeans and a backwards cap to connect with the youth. Powered by a Porsche-designed 1130cc Revolution Vive twin engine producing 115 to 125 horsepower, the VRod was Harley's attempt to attract younger riders who wanted something that could actually take a corner without scraping the entire undercarriage. The thing is, VRod tries to be everything to everyone and ends up being nothing to anyone. A 640-pound behemoth that's too sporty for traditional Harley riders and too heavy for sport bike enthusiasts. Despite its relatively impressive engine, the VRod gets a dismal 37 miles per gallon and handles like a shopping cart with a flat wheel. The riding position is a bizarre compromise that leaves you neither comfortable nor in control, with forward controls that make precise handling about as likely as finding affordable healthcare. And let's talk about that radiator. A sacrilegious addition to a Harley that sticks out like a sore thumb. Traditional Harley riders rejected it for not being authentic, while performance riders laughed at its weight and handling. The VRod is the perfect bike for someone who wants to tell everyone they ride a Harley, but secretly wishes they bought a Ducati. It's a $17,000 identity crisis on wheels. But if you think the VRod is an expensive mistake, our next entry proves that even toy motorcycles can cost real motorcycle money. Prepare to meet the world's most overpriced embarrassment. We have the Indian EFTR Jr, a bike that proves you can indeed pay too much for a toy. Nothing says I make poor financial decisions quite like spending $950 on an electric dirt bike designed for children but marketed to adults with more money than sense. The Indian EFTR Jr is a miniature electric replica of Indian's FTR 1200 flat track racer. With a top speed of 15 miles per hour and a battery range of about 140 minutes in low mode, this isn't a motorcycle. It's an expensive toy that adults use to pretend they're riding a real bike. It's marketed as a serious piece of equipment when it's really just a glorified toy. Powered by a pathetic electric motor that produces the equivalent of about 3 horsepower, this 175-pound motorcycle is what happens when marketing departments are allowed to run wild. It's the motorcycle equivalent of those plastic kitchens adults buy for children, except you're the child and you paid for it yourself. The EFTR Jr. doesn't even qualify for MPG ratings because it's not a real vehicle. It's a backyard plaything masquerading as a motorcycle, complete with a price tag that could get you a decent used actual motorcycle. If you're an adult riding this around your property, you're not a motorcyclist. You're a grown person on a children's toy. The only thing more embarrassing than being seen on one is having to explain to your friends why you bought it. But if you think a toy pretending to be a motorcycle is ridiculous, wait until you see what happens when a scooter tries to cosplay as a cruiser. Sliding next in our list, we have the Kawasaki Eliminator 125, a bike that tries to be a cruiser but ends up being a scooter with delusions of grandeur. Powered by a microscopic 124cc single-cylinder engine that produces a laughable 12 horsepower, the Eliminator is neither eliminating nor impressive. It struggles to reach 65 miles per hour downhill with a tailwind, yet somehow Kawasaki had the audacity to style it like a cruiser. It tries to look like a big, bad cruiser, but has the heart of a lawnmower. Despite its excellent 70 miles per gallon fuel economy, this 290-pound cruiser is the motorcycle equivalent of a chihuahua wearing a spiked collar, trying desperately to look tough while being fundamentally unthreatening. The Eliminator 125 is a bike for people who want to look like they ride a Harley but have the budget and courage of someone who should stick to bicycles. The seat height is low enough for almost anyone, which is convenient because that's about the only demographic this bike appeals to, anyone who doesn't know better. The suspension is so basic, it makes a pogo stick look sophisticated, and the brakes require the planning and foresight usually reserved for space missions. If you're over 160 pounds, congratulations, you've just become the most powerful component on the motorcycle. Kawasaki mercifully discontinued this model, yet somehow they still occasionally appear for sale, usually by owners who finally realized that cruiser styling doesn't actually make a 125cc bike cool. But if you think an underpowered fake cruiser is confusing, our next entry will leave you scratching your head until you reach bone. This bike doesn't just have an identity crisis, it has a full-blown identity breakdown. Next up, we have the Honda CTX700, a bike that can't decide what it wants to be when it grows up. Is it a cruiser? Is it a sport bike? Is it a touring bike? Honda's answer was yes to all of those. And the result was a bike that failed spectacularly at being any of those things. Powered by a 670cc parallel twin engine that produces a thoroughly underwhelming 48 horsepower, the CTX700 is a motorcycle designed by committee. It has the seating position of a cruiser, the fairing of a sport tourer, and the excitement level of a dishwasher. The criticism here is that it tries to be everything and ends up being nothing. The riding experience is equally baffling. The feet-forward position suggests cruiser, but the relatively high handlebars say touring bike, resulting in a riding position that seems specifically designed to make chiropractors wealthy. And despite its substantial size, the CTX700 offers minimal storage space, poor passenger accommodations, and handling that can best be described as reluctant. At 500 pounds wet, it's too heavy for its power output, making its 60 miles per gallon fuel economy the only thing worth mentioning. But the real head-scratcher is the optional DCT automatic transmission that Honda grandly marketed as revolutionary. There's nothing revolutionary about paying motorcycle prices for scooter performance. The CTX700 is the perfect bike for someone who doesn't actually want a motorcycle, but feels obligated to own one. It's the motorcycle equivalent of sensible beige slacks, technically functional, but devoid of any personality or joy. But if you think Honda's identity crisis is bad, wait until you see what happens when a Korean manufacturer tries to copy Japanese sport bikes without understanding what makes them good. Our next bike is the motorcycle equivalent of a knockoff designer handbag. Here we have the Hyosung GT250R, a bike that proves imitation is not always the sincerest form of flattery. This is what happens when a company looks at Japanese sport bikes and thinks, we can make that, but worse in every way. Powered by a 249cc V-twin engine that somehow manages to produce only 28 horsepower despite having twice the cylinders of its Japanese competitors, the GT250R is a masterclass in disappointment. It weighs a porky 375 pounds wet, making its power-to-weight ratio similar to that of an asthmatic hamster. The criticism here is that it tries to look like a sports bike, but performs like a scooter. Despite getting a reasonable 65 miles per gallon, the Hyosung is the motorcycle equivalent of those knockoff designer sunglasses you buy from a street vendor. It looks vaguely like the real thing until you actually use it. The fit and finish would make Fisher-Price blush, with plastics that seem designed to crack if you look at them too intensely. The electrical system appears to have been designed by someone whose understanding of electricity came from rubbing balloons on their hair. Owners report mysterious electrical gremlins that would baffle even the most experienced mechanics. And let's talk about resale value, or rather, the complete lack thereof. Buy a GT250R new, and by the time you ride it home, it's already depreciated more than a banana left in the sun. Parts availability? Hope you enjoy waiting weeks for shipping from Korea, assuming the parts are even still made. The GT250R is the perfect bike for someone who wants to look like they ride a sports bike, but doesn't want any of the reliability, performance, or respect that comes with owning a Japanese or European machine. But if you think a Korean knockoff is embarrassing, wait until you see what happens when an American icon tries to build an entry-level bike by cutting every corner possible. Our next bike is so bad, even its creator publicly destroyed one. Let's take a look at the Bule Blast. A bike that proves even the best intentions can lead to the worst outcomes. This is what happens when Harley-Davidson tries to build an entry-level motorcycle and fails spectacularly. Powered by a single-cylinder 492cc engine that produces a pathetic 34 horsepower, the Blast was supposed to be Harley's gateway drug to get new riders hooked on the brand. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about what happens when you cut too many corners. It tries to be a Harley, but ends up being a headache. Despite its relatively good 65 miles per gallon fuel economy, this 360-pound monstrosity handles like it's allergic to corners. The suspension seems to be made of recycled pogo sticks, and the brakes require the kind of forward planning usually reserved for retirement savings. The Blast's plastic body panels crack if you look at them wrong, and the engine vibrates so violently at certain RPMs that owners report losing fillings. It's like riding a paint mixer that occasionally decides to transport you from one place to another. Eric Bule himself was so embarrassed by this bike that he literally crushed one in a promotional video for his next company. When the creator of your motorcycle publicly destroys one to make a point, perhaps it's time to reconsider your purchase. The Bule Blast is the perfect bike for someone who wants the Harley-Davidson experience of constant maintenance and disappointment, but doesn't have the budget for a full-size Harley. But if you think 2 wheels of disappointment is bad, wait until you see what happens when they add a 3rd wheel to the mix. Our next entry proves that sometimes more isn't better. It's just more expensive and more ridiculous. Rolling into our list, we have the CanAm Spider, a vehicle that proves 3 wheels are not always better than 2. This is what happens when someone looks at a motorcycle and thinks, this would be better if it was more like a snowmobile with wheels. Powered by a Rotax 998 cc V-twin engine, in most models that produces around 100 horsepower, the Spider isn't a motorcycle. It's a 1,000-pound identity crisis. It has 3 wheels, a car-like seat, and the handling characteristics of a shopping cart with a wonky wheel. Offering the thrill of motorcycling without any of the actual thrill, despite getting only about 35 miles per gallon, the Spider costs as much as a decent car, starting at around $17,000 and going up to $27,000 for models that come with more unnecessary gadgets than a Sky Mall catalog. The Spider removes everything that makes motorcycling enjoyable: the lean, the connection to the road, the sense of freedom, and replaces it with a bloated, overcomplicated machine that handles like a drunk rhinoceros. It doesn't lean into corners, it plows through them with all the grace of a bulldozer. The Spider is the perfect vehicle for someone who wants to tell everyone they ride a motorcycle, but is terrified of actually riding one. It's the motorcycle equivalent of those swimming pools with the plastic lane dividers. Technically, you're in the water, but no one's impressed by your bravery. But if you think a three-wheeled monstrosity is the height of motorcycle confusion, wait until you see what happens when an iconic American brand tries to go green overnight. Our next bike proves that even the most established manufacturers can completely miss the mark. Now we have the Harley-Davidson Livewire, a bike that proves even the most iconic brands can miss the mark. This is what happens when a company known for making loud, inefficient cruisers tries to go green overnight. Powered by a battery that produces 105 horsepower and 86 foot-pounds of torque, the Livewire could have been revolutionary. Instead, it's a $30,000 monument to missed opportunities. The criticism here is that it tries to be a Harley for the modern age, but ends up being a very expensive experiment. This 550-pound electric motorcycle offers a paltry 146-mile range in the city and much less on the highway, making it impractical for the long rides Harley owners typically enjoy. It's the equivalent of buying a boat that's afraid of water. The Livewire is a Harley that doesn't sound like a Harley, doesn't look like a Harley, and doesn't ride like a Harley. It's an identity crisis with handlebars, marketed to environmentally conscious riders who somehow have $30,000 to spend on a motorcycle, but not enough sense to buy one that can actually go the distance. And let's talk about charging. Hope you enjoy spending 40 minutes at a DC fast charger or an entire night on a standard outlet. Nothing says freedom of the open road quite like planning your route around charging stations and bringing a good book for the waits. The Livewire is the perfect bike for someone who wants to tell their friends they care about the environment, but doesn't actually need to go anywhere. But if you think an overpriced electric Harley is the pinnacle of motorcycle madness, prepare yourself for our #1 spot. This final bike proves that sometimes having too much of everything creates the perfect storm of motorcycle stupidity. This bike proves that sometimes having too much of everything creates the perfect storm of motorcycle stupidity. Meet the Suzuki Bee King, the motorcycle equivalent of bringing a nuclear weapon to a knife fight and still somehow losing. The Bee King started life as a concept bike featuring the engine from the Hayabusa, the world's fastest production motorcycle. By the time it reached production in 2007, it had transformed into a 1,340cc naked bike that produced 181 horsepower and weighed a staggering 518 pounds wet. Was built to be a superbike for the street, but ends up being a heavy, unwieldy beast. This monstrosity gets a dismal 30 miles per gallon and features exhaust pipes the size of industrial drainage systems. The styling can best be described as what would happen if a transformer had indigestion, all bulges and unnecessary plastic in places where no plastic should be. Despite its impressive power, the Bee King handles like a supertanker thanks to its weight and bizarre weight distribution. It's too powerful for the street, too heavy for the track, and too ugly for photographs. It's a bike without a purpose, a solution to a problem no one had. The Bee King was so poorly received that Suzuki discontinued it after just 3 years, making it one of the shortest production runs for a flagship model from a major manufacturer. Today, they occasionally appear for sale, usually by owners who finally realized that having the biggest engine doesn't actually translate to having the most fun. The Bee King is the perfect bike for someone who wants to tell everyone how fast their motorcycle is, while secretly being terrified to use more than 20% of the throttle. It's the motorcycle equivalent of buying a supercomputer to check your email. Impressive on paper, ridiculous in practice. Let's move on to the machine that once ruled the Boulevard and now can't even get off the lot. The Suzuki Boulevard M109R was once the muscle cruiser every rider wanted to be seen on. A beast of a bike, built around a 1783 cubic centimeter V-twin that produced 128 horsepower and a monstrous 118 pound-feet of torque. It was big, brutal, and impossible to ignore. With its massive rear tire, aggressive stance, and throaty growl, the M109R didn't just make a statement, it screamed. But fast forward to today, and the only thing screaming is the silence in the showroom. Dealers across the country are stuck with M109Rs they simply cannot sell. Prices are collapsing. Some shops are listing them for as low as $8,000. A few have dipped under $7,500. Still, the bikes sit untouched, their chrome collecting dust under fluorescent lights. So what happened? Well, the M109R is a relic. While other bikes evolved, this one stood still. There's no traction control, no ride modes, no TFT dash, and the analog gauges look like leftovers from a decade-old parts bin. For a modern rider, it feels like stepping back in time, and not in a good way. Fuel economy doesn't help either. At just 32 miles per gallon, the M109R is a gas-guzzling heavyweight at a time when fuel prices are climbing fast. Maintenance costs are high, comfort is minimal, and tech practically non-existent. One dealer in Missouri even admitted they discounted 5 M109Rs to move them out the door. Not one sold. The sad truth? The Boulevard M109R still looks like a muscle bike, but in 2025, it rides like a mistake. And if you think that's bad, Harley-Davidson's next-gen cruiser was supposed to change everything. But what it did instead was drive buyers straight into the arms of the competition. No one expected the Sportster S to tank this hard. A modern, liquid-cooled machine aimed at younger riders who wanted power, style, and tech, all in one sharp package. On paper, it delivered. A Revolution Max 1250 engine with 120 horsepower and 94 pound-feet of torque. Ride modes, a slipper clutch, a digital dash. It was everything Harley promised and more. Harley threw everything at it. Modern tech, aggressive styling, a liquid-cooled engine, and hoped it would bridge the gap between old school and next gen. And still, it flopped. Walk into any Harley dealership in 2025 and you'll see it. Rows of untouched Sportster S units, some marked down by $3,000 or more. A bike that launched at 15 grand is now going for 12, even 11, and dealers still can't move them. So what went wrong? For starters, the competition didn't just catch up, they blew past. Bikes like the Yamaha MT-07 cost thousands less, way less, and ride better. Add in skyrocketing insurance premiums and higher cost of ownership, and suddenly the Sportster S stopped looking like the future and started looking like a bad decision. Then there's the ride. The Sportster S weighs over 500 pounds, and it feels like it. Despite the aggressive styling, it's stiff in corners, clunky in traffic, and lacking the soul that older Harley riders expect. And new riders, they're not interested in the soul. They want value. Resale tells the rest of the story. Riders who paid MSRP in 2022 are now struggling to get even 9 grand for clean, low-mileage bikes. One seller posted his barely used Sportster S for $8,500. After 2 months, not a single bite. The Sportster S was supposed to be Harley's rebirth, a bold leap into the future. But as that dream faded, BMW tried to resurrect the past in chrome and steel, and ended up watching it sink like a stone. The BMW R18 was supposed to be a masterpiece, a luxury cruiser with old-school charm, modern engineering, and the biggest boxer engine BMW had ever built. With 91 horsepower and 116 pound-feet of torque, it had the numbers. With chrome everywhere, a stretched-out stance, and vintage cues pulled from the 1930s, it had the look. It was meant to go toe-to-toe with Harley's finest and win, but it didn't. In 2025, the R18 is one of the slowest-selling bikes on BMW showroom floors. Dealers are cutting prices by $3,000, $4,000, even $5,000, trying to get them out the door. And even with those discounts, buyers are walking right past them. Why? Because no one asked for this. The R18 weighs nearly 900 pounds. Let that sink in. Almost half a ton. It's heavy, awkward, and physically exhausting for most riders. The giant boxer engine sticks out like wings, making it feel wide and clumsy in traffic. And despite all the weight, all the flash, and all the retro branding, it doesn't offer much in return. Just basic traction control, ABS, and a layout that feels more like a rolling art piece than a real-world motorcycle. Fuel economy, poor. Rider comfort, questionable. Versatility, non-existent. And let's be honest, BMW's core customers aren't looking for chrome-laden cruisers. They want GS models, RTS, bikes that eat miles and tackle continents. The R18 tried to win over the cruiser crowd, but Harley loyalists never took the bait. And younger riders? They didn't even look twice. Now, R18s are being sold for as low as $10,000. That's a massive drop from its original price tag. But even at that number, most buyers know better, because a discount doesn't mean value. It means nobody else wanted it either. And just when you thought things couldn't get heavier, Kawasaki's beginner-friendly cruiser proves that even lightweight legends have their expiration dates. The Kawasaki's Vulcan S used to be the obvious choice for new riders. Affordable, approachable, and built around Kawasaki's tried-and-true 649 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine, it offered just enough power to grow with, but not so much to intimidate. Adjustable ergonomics, a low seat height, and a friendly ride made it an easy recommendation for new riders for years. But now, it's dead weight on dealership floors. The Vulcan S hasn't seen a real update in nearly a decade. The same analog gauges, the same dated styling, the same basic tech, or lack of it. No ride modes, no cornering ABS, no TFT display. In 2025, it feels like a time capsule from 2015. And the price? It's no longer a budget option. Tariffs and inflation have pushed it close to $8,000 out the door. At that number, riders are turning to better-equipped rivals like the Honda Rebel 500, which offers more style, more tech, and better resale for less money. Speaking of resale, it's brutal. Riders who bought a new Vulcan S just a few years ago are now getting offered less than $4,000. Some private sellers are listing clean, low-mileage bikes for $3,500, and they're still not moving. It's a shame because the Vulcan S was a great first bike in its time, but 2025 isn't that time anymore. And what used to be a smart entry into cruising is now just an outdated leftover dealers can't get rid of. But if you think beginner bikes are taking a hit, wait until you see what's happening to high-end performance tourers, because the next bike, it's completely falling apart on the sales floor. There was a time when the KTM 1290 Superduke GT felt invincible. Long-distance touring, high-speed carving, and full-throttle adrenaline. With a 1,299 cubic centimeter V-twin that spits out a ferocious 175 horsepower and 94 pound-feet of torque, it's one of the most powerful sport touring machines ever built. Add cornering ABS, ride modes, a quick shifter, and semi-active suspension, and you've got a tech package that looks unbeatable on paper. But in the real world, this bike has become a financial disaster. At launch, the Superduke GT came with a sticker price north of $20,000. And from day one, that number scared people off. Even among performance junkies, 20 grand was a tough pill to swallow, especially when you could get a Yamaha Tracer 9 GT or Kawasaki Ninja 1000 SX for thousands less, with similar features and far better reliability. That's the other problem: reliability. Riders have reported electrical gremlins, overheating issues, flaky electronics, and expensive parts. Valve checks and software bugs become routine headaches. And if something breaks, good luck finding a shop that can fix it without ordering specialty parts from Europe. Now, in 2025, dealerships are dumping Superduke GTs with discounts of up to $4,000, sometimes more. Bikes that once cost $20,000 are sitting on the used market for $9,000, $8,500, even less. The depreciation is crushing. And worse, the buyer pool is shrinking. Riders who want long-haul comfort don't trust the reliability. Riders who want performance go for lighter, simpler machines. And those who still love KTM, most of them are chasing dirt, not sport touring hybrids. The Superduke GT had all the tools to be a legend, but in 2025, it's just another overpriced rocket that burned too hot and left nothing but smoke. It's one thing for a premium sport tourer to fall from grace. It's another when a classic budget cruiser becomes dead weight in a showroom full of regrets. The Honda Shadow Phantom used to sell itself. Low seat, blacked out styling, bulletproof reputation. For years, it was the safe choice, especially for newer riders chasing that bobber vibe without breaking the bank. But now, it's a ghost. Dealerships can't give them away. Even used Shadows with low miles and shiny pipes are listed at $3,500 and still collecting digital cobwebs on classified sites. Because the truth is, riders have moved on, and the Phantom hasn't. The tech is ancient. No ride modes, no digital dash, no standard ABS. Just a basic V-twin making 44 horsepower and hoping nobody notices the clock stopped ticking in 2010. Even loyal Honda fans are turning their backs. Chinese and mid-tier brands are offering more for less. New designs, better fuel economy, and real features. The Shadow, it's still banking on nostalgia. And in 2025, that currency just doesn't spend. And if you think a Japanese cruiser gathering dust is bad, wait till you see how a British icon lost its voice. Every great tragedy starts with promise, and this one had it all: looks, lineage, and loud praise. But in the end, it couldn't outrun the truth or the clearance rack. The Indian Scout 60 should have been a home run. It had a heritage, it had a name, it even had the specs: 999 cubic centimeters V-twin, 78 horsepower, a low seat, and clean cruiser lines. It was built to be the affordable entry point into a storied American brand. But affordability means nothing if the bike doesn't hold value. And in 2025, the Scout 60 is underwater. Dealerships are offering thousands off. Private sellers can't even get half of what they paid. Listings for $5,000 sit untouched for months. The depreciation curve isn't just steep, it's vertical. The reason? It's outdated. No TFT display, no traction control, no tech. Just a stripped-down cruiser at a time when stripped down no longer means cool. It means behind. To make matters worse, maintenance is expensive, parts are costly, and finding a shop that'll touch one without sending you straight back to the dealership is getting harder every year. For a bike that was supposed to welcome new riders into the Indian family, the Scout 60 has become a warning sign instead. A reminder that even legacy brands can miss the mark badly. And speaking of disappointment, the next one might be the most painful for riders who thought they were buying a premium Italian dream machine. Ducati. The name alone used to mean something: speed, passion, pedigree. But not every Ducati holds its value, and some, they collapse the second you sign the papers. The Ducati Monster 937 looked like a no-brainer. 111 horsepower, lightweight frame, Italian styling that screamed performance. For around $12,500, it promised all the thrills of a middleweight naked bike with Ducati's signature flair. Instead, it became a finance trap. In 2025, you'll find them sitting unsold, marked down by $3,000 or more. Dealers don't even bother hiding the desperation. And on the used market, prices have tanked. Riders who paid full price 2 years ago are lucky to get $9,000 now. Some can't even break $8,000. Why? Because it's not just about the purchase price. Ducati's ownership costs are brutal. Frequent valve checks, costly service intervals, electronics that love to act up. Every visit to the shop feels like writing a check for regret. And when buyers compare it to competitors like the Yamaha MT-09 or Suzuki GSX250R, bikes that are faster, cheaper, and easier to live with, the Monster starts to look less like a masterpiece and more like a mistake. It still looks the part, but in 2025, the Ducati badge isn't enough. Not when the market expects more, for less. But if you think that's rough, just wait, because the final bike on this list doesn't just disappoint, it rewrites the definition of buyer's remorse. This was supposed to be Harley-Davidson's revolution. Instead, it became the industry's punchline. The Livewire was Harley's attempt to prove it could be something it's not, an electric motorcycle chasing Silicon Valley dreams in a leather and steel world. It packed 100 horsepower, 84 pound-feet of torque, and a 0 to 60 time that looked great in a press release. But no amount of speed could hide the fact that this was a Harley with no heart, no soul, and no audience. When it was first unveiled, Harley treated it like the second coming. There were sleek promotional videos, high-budget unveilings, test rides for influencers, and claims that this was the future of motorcycling. The company poured millions into convincing the world that it was no longer a relic of the past, that it could be bold, young, relevant. But from day one, the numbers didn't add up. The Livewire hit the market with a jaw-dropping $29,799 price tag, more than most of Harley's fully loaded touring bikes. Riders looked at that price and laughed. It's not that riders were against electric motorcycles, they just weren't interested in one that missed the mark this badly. The biggest issue? Range. Even under ideal conditions, the Livewire barely cracks 146 miles in the city. On the highway, that figure drops to double digits. Long-distance riders, Harley's bread and butter, weren't going to plan cross-country trips around public charging stations. And the younger urban riders Harley was hoping to attract? They weren't interested in dropping luxury car money on a motorcycle with a glorified smartphone app for a dash. Even the ride experience felt alien. There was no gear shifting, no engine vibration, no iconic rumble, just silent acceleration. Some called it smooth, Most called it soulless. Harley's core customers wanted the visceral experience of a V-twin thumping beneath them. The Livewire gave them a whisper. It didn't roar, it hummed. And while engineers applauded the tech, riders just shrugged and walked away. Younger riders weren't sold either. If they wanted electric, there were cheaper, better options. If they wanted excitement, there were faster, louder ones. The Livewire was priced like a revolution, but delivered like a science project. As of 2025, dealerships are doing everything they can to unload the units still sitting under showroom lights. Discounts of $6,000 or more are common. Some dealers are bundling accessories or service credits just to sweeten the deal, but none of it's working. The bike that was supposed to lead Harley into a new era now sits forgotten, quietly depreciating in the corner. The resale market? It's a bloodbath. Livewires that once sold for nearly $30,000 are now listed online for under $15,000, and they're still not moving. The verdict is in. The Livewire wasn't the future. It was a desperate attempt to buy relevance. A $30,000 lesson that no amount of software, silence, or sleek branding can replace the one thing Harley-Davidson built its legacy on: soul. Thanks for watching this compilation. Not done watching yet? Click on the next video right now.